In this video, I'm going to show you 4 piano relaxation exercises to help you play piano without tension, and we're starting right now. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So after I show you these 4 relaxation exercises, we're going to discuss the importance of getting rid of tension, how to know if you have tension, and the importance of movement and why these exercises work. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So the first exercise that I'm going to show you is what I call the Swans Neck. Now, I've talked about this in a couple different videos, but I just wanted to briefly mention it here again because it's probably one of the most helpful exercises I've come across. And basically, it looks like this. So I'm going to start above the keys, and I'm going to completely relax my hand and my wrist like so. Now imagine, use your imagination, and notice that this has a sort of general look of a swan, hence the swan's neck. Now this is probably the most important element of the exercise because in order to get this and have it be truly relaxed, these muscles in my arm need to be completely released, and the muscles in my hand and my fingers need to be completely released as well, which of course is relaxation. There we go. Yay, we figured it out. Now, let's go through this exercise. So what we're going to do is I'm going to be using fingers 2 and 3, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to, once I'm above the keys in this position, in a very relaxed state, I'm going to go down on my second finger and play C. And then once I let my wrist just fall down, then I'm going to start going up. And as I go up, my wrist is going to rise as if it's sort of like a helium balloon is tied to it, and it's going to rise like this. So it looks like this. I start with this droopy wrist, go down on my second finger on C, and then I go up on my third finger, and as soon as I play, my wrist starts rising like so. Now, there's a couple things that we want to make sure as we do this. The first thing is that when we start, we want to make sure that this is indeed loose and relaxed. We want to make sure that my muscles in my arm, you can feel I'm kind of jiggling them here. They have to be really relaxed and loose, completely released in order for me to do this, okay? And notice that this movement is sort of like coming from my elbow, okay? So my shoulder is not moving, okay? Now we can do this a number of times, down on 2, up on 3, okay? So notice that I'm keeping that really relaxed arm and wrist and hand the whole time, okay? If it looks something like this, does that look loose? No, it looks very kind of tense. It looks forced. Okay, so we need to make sure that this is nice and loose. Down to the keys. We do this, okay? And like so. Now, this is a really, really good exercise to be able to go to the keys and even play a second note and keep that sort of sense of relaxation. So I'm really emphasizing sort of falling into the keys without pressing too much into the keyboard, okay? This motion going down and everything is nice and relaxed. And I can come up and then just gently let go of that note. And I'm trying to kind of use my hand here so that you can kind of focus on the motion in my wrist, okay? This is not just a wrist exercise, but an arm, wrist, hand, and fingers exercise. So you can do a couple repetitions. You can go up the keyboard if you like so. You go up. What I recommend though is that you do not do it fast. It should be very, very slow. And after a little while, you should notice that it should feel looser and more fluent. If at first it feels kind of tense and awkward and angular, that's actually quite common, and that's okay, but you don't want to overdo it. If you overdo it, you're probably not going to alleviate tension, you're probably just going to cause more tension. Okay, let's look at exercise number 2, which I call elbow glides, which is not as cool of a name, but it works. And basically, it looks like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play C, and I'm just going to play with my thumb, but we're going to go through all the fingers in a moment. So I'm going to play C, an octave below middle C, with my thumb in my left hand, and C an octave above C with my right hand, also my thumb. And I'm going to start by playing both of my thumbs together, and I'm going to bring my elbows out like so, and then I'm going to bring back in and just try to completely release them. So I'm going to actively push my elbows apart like so, and then I'm going to try just release them and relax. Okay? Notice that I'm holding those notes in both of my thumbs as I do this. And when you push your elbows out, this very active motion, pushing them out, and then you just relax, the elbow should come down to basically straight. So see how it's not perfectly, like, we don't want to be too nitpicky here, but it's pretty darn straight. If I draw a line between my elbow and about the middle of my hand, it's pretty darn straight, okay? That's why I chose an octave above and an octave below, because in this position, when your elbow is released, it should look like this. Now, elbow tension is very, very common in piano playing, so this is another excellent exercise. We can do that a couple times. Now, we can then do that across all of our fingers. So then we can do second fingers, elbows out, and then release, and they should feel nice and relaxed. So we can kind of wiggle around here a little bit, make sure those feel nice and good. And then we can do third fingers, push the elbows out, they sort of glide out, and then glide back in like so. And you can even take your other hand here and sort of shove your elbow. Does it really feel loose, or does it feel like it's really tense there? Okay, so we want them to be completely relaxed. And really what we're looking for here is that the arm is hanging from the shoulder and has a sort of pendulum-like quality. Okay, so it just sort of swings there, it just sort of moves around, it's not tense. And we can go through all of our fingers to the fifth finger, like so, and then release here while holding that note there. And notice that nothing is stiff and tense, but everything is able to move around, okay? Now, this, like the previous exercise, I wouldn't try to overdo it. If you struggle with a lot of elbow tension, this could potentially make it worse if you're not truly releasing things, okay? So it's really important with all of these exercises to make sure that you're focusing on how it feels. It should feel loose. Like if you just take your arms in your hand, you just sort of like jiggle them out, and everything's totally loose and floppy, you should be able to know what that feels like. Now, the third exercise here is what I call shoulder lifts. So the names are getting less and less cool and more lame. Let's go ahead and look at this exercise. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to start just with our hands in our lap. So I'm going to put my hands on my lap, and I'm going to try to make sure that I'm sitting up nice and straight with good posture. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my shoulders up as if I'm trying to touch the bottom of my ear, or my earlobe, with my shoulder blades. So I'm pulling my shoulders up like so. I'm holding for 2 counts, and then I'm releasing. And notice that I'm almost trying to just drop my shoulders, like release immediately, okay? So I raise my shoulders up as if I'm trying to touch my ears, hold that for about 3 seconds, and then I release, okay? Now, once you do that and get familiar with that and are able to do that, then we can go to the keyboard. If you're struggling to even do that, let's say you're struggling to release your shoulders, or you notice, wow, my shoulders were already almost touching my ears when I started, then you should probably spend a little bit more time just with that, with hands on the lap, just trying to release the shoulders, okay? Then what we can do is we can go to the keyboard. And basically what I'm gonna do here, you could do something different. The exact notes are not actually terribly important here. I'm gonna play a C chord in my right hand, root position, and then in left hand, I'm going to play an octave below, middle C, a second inversion C chord, like so. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to play that chord, and I'm going to pull my shoulders up, hold for 3 seconds, and then I'm gonna release, okay? And then I can do that again. Play that chord, I'm gonna hold those notes, I'm gonna pull my shoulders up, hold for about 3 seconds, and then release, okay? Now, what I want you to do is when you do that, I want you to notice how bad it feels, okay? So sometimes the best way to correct bad sort of posture or tension at the keyboard is to demonstrate how bad it is and really feel that and notice that. And it draws our attention to it and goes, wow, that's horrible. I don't want to do that. And now I'm aware of that thing. So if you play this, this should feel fine. It should feel good, okay? As long as we don't have a lot of excess tension, which of course, if you're doing these exercises, you may. But hopefully playing this chord feels pretty good. Now, when you lift your shoulders, you pull them up like so, you should notice that you almost feel disconnected from your hands. It feels like all of your attention is now in the shoulders, and being able to move here freely and coordinated is more difficult. It just feels kind of sluggish. And then if you release, Ooh, now I feel like I can move again, okay? And that's actually a really important point, because when we have that massive amount of tension in the shoulder, it restricts the movement of these muscles and makes it much more difficult to move. So that's a really, really great exercise. Like the preceding one, we want to make sure that we don't overdo it, but that we do it maybe once, twice a day at most, to just get familiar with that. All right, now, the last exercise we're going to do is going to combine all of those elements together, and I call them circles. Again, pretty lame name, but that's okay. What we did basically is we looked at the wrist, we looked at the elbow or the arm by extension, and we looked at the shoulders. Now we want to combine all of those basic motions or movements into one exercise, a circle exercise. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to play a single note. Okay, so I'm going to play, say, my second finger here. So I play my second finger, and I'm going to pretend like I'm drawing a circle with my wrist and my arm. So imagine that I'm drawing sort of a vertical circle like this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down, and then up and around. So see how I'm kind of like drawing almost a circle there. Let's notice three things about this. Notice that my wrist is going up and down, kind of like the Swans Neck. Notice that my elbow is traveling, it's moving, it's not being held in a stiff position, and it's actually trying to like stay aligned behind my hand as I move around the whole time. Also notice, very important here, my upper arm and my shoulder is moving. Okay, so my shoulder girdle is not like locked in a position. Okay, it's moving. It's able to move. It's not going up and down, but it's moving around here, okay? So this exercise is especially important and ties all of those things together, because it's very, very common to have tension in the wrist or the hand, as well as the elbow and the shoulder. That's why we're focusing on these particular areas, and then this exercise is sort of tying all those sort of concepts together. What I can do is I can start by just experiencing that circular motion without playing any keys. And I could even close the lid if I wanted to, okay? Then what I can do is then I can go to the keyboard, I can play a note, and I want to very lightly keep that note down, okay? So I'm not gripping that note for dear life. I'm not pressing really hard. It's just very lightly, okay? It's sort of like I'm just putting enough effort to just hold it down, but everything is free to move. So a lot of times tension comes from muscles being held in a stiff position, okay? For instance, the arm being held in a stiff position and locked and unable to move. When everything's moving together, it's very difficult for muscles to tense up, okay? Now, notice in the right hand, I'm sort of doing that counterclockwise, and then in the left hand, I'm going to do the opposite, okay? You could do them the other way around, but I think it's just easier and better, because then you're sort of going around to your thumb, and so it just sort of feels better, okay? So, same thing in my left hand, but clockwise, okay? So I'm going to go down, and I'm going to circle around like this. Now, I would start with just the index fingers, and I would get really, really comfortable with that. If you can be really comfortable with that, then you could proceed to the other fingers. Now, the last thing I want to mention about this is that when you are circling, let's say on a long finger, the finger is very long, and so you could go a lot lower and a lot higher. You don't really want to go excessively low and high. And in the beginning, it might be beneficial to make that a little bit larger to make sure you force everything to move a little bit. But when you have a short finger, for instance my thumb, I can't make that big of movement because the finger is so short. Make the circle as big or as little as is comfortable and makes sense. If it feels like things are being forced, it's either because your body is sort of tensing up because it's just so used to those tensing motions at the keyboard, or it could be that you're just doing too much. Okay, so this, it's like that's just too much. You're forcing things. So we want to make sure we do that. Like I mentioned with the other ones, we don't want to overdo anything, but we want to do this once or twice a day, and then over time, these should really help alleviate shoulder tension, elbow tension, arm, forearm, wrist, hand tension, etc. Now let's talk briefly about the importance of getting rid of tension and how to know if you have tension. So obviously, getting rid of tension is really important because tension hinders movement, and a lot of times it can even mean that we're overusing muscles, or even that something is being held stiff. in a stiff position, which is why it's important to realize that what these exercises are trying to develop is freedom of movement. When muscles move, they have trouble tensing up. So hopefully you can kind of see the importance of getting rid of tension and see how we can do that through a process of these exercises and making sure that we're moving or not overusing things, etc. And then the last thing we want to talk about is how to know if you have tension, which is actually fairly difficult to explain here because it's very difficult to know if you have tension sometimes. A lot of times we might feel that we have tension in our elbow a little bit, but maybe we don't realize that we have a lot of tension in our shoulder or even in our hand. And a lot of times the reason for this is because we can be so used to tension, even if it's a small amount of underlying tension, that we just don't even realize it's there. I remember when I was younger, I had so much tension in my piano playing, but I didn't even realize it. In fact, I didn't fully realize that I had so much tension until I actually injured myself and then started taking lessons from a different teacher who helped me to understand, oh, wow, I didn't know I had that much tension. That's why I couldn't play fast. It's why I just couldn't make those transitions sound well. But hopefully through the process of these exercises, you can begin to develop an awareness of the difference between loose and free movement, or muscles being completely loose, and tenseness and awkwardness and muscles being held in a stiff position or overuse. So I hope this information was useful and informative. Hopefully you guys find value in it and are able to apply them to your practicing, and I truly hope that they can help you release tension in your practicing so you can play faster and more fluently and just enjoy playing a lot more. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.